Hello again, YouTube. Today I want to talk about a documentary called Generation Like. I've been promising that I'll talk about this documentary for a while now. It was created by Douglas Rushkoff, who is a professor and author of many books on the media, as well as the creator of other documentaries, including one of my all-time favorite documentaries, The Merchants of Cool. Now, Generation Like is essentially the sequel to The Merchants of Cool. The Merchants of Cool was created in, I believe, 2001, and it examined the way that marketing to teenagers worked in the late 90s or around that time period. And of course, this resonated with me because that was sort of my teenage years. The events and the bands and the culture that are featured in The Merchants of Cool were what I grew up with as a teenager. However, as Generation Like shows, all of that is a bit dated now, not merely in the sense that the cultural references are some 15 years gone at this point, but also because the way marketing is done has fundamentally changed with the emergence of social media. As The Merchants of Cool shows, marketing to teenagers prior to the emergence of social media was primarily based on market research and focus groups. People would go out and conduct interviews with teenagers, focus groups with teenagers, try and get a sense of what they're thinking and feeling and what they're interested in, and then take that and use that to shape the content that they release. But with the emergence of social media, young people and teenagers, they're creating all sorts of big data, as they call it nowadays, which marketers can use to know all of these things without having to go through the sort of effort that they went through before to find out what teenagers like and are interested in. And all of this big data gathered by teenagers' participation in social media forms the basis of modern marketing to teenagers. But it goes beyond merely using social media as yet another market research tool. In many cases, the marketers are attempting to turn the teenagers into the ones doing the marketing for them. Now, obviously, a certain amount of this would happen organically, but you might be surprised at the degree to which much of this is contrived by the marketing companies. The marketers are basically trying to make their own efforts seem invisible to the average social media user, and all of the buzz and hype surrounding a new movie or product or what have you seem like it's all organically coming from other social media users. Towards the beginning of the documentary, Rushkoff goes out to interview ordinary, everyday teenagers. And as he observes, although the teenagers of today seem more sophisticated than ever before, in reality, they're pretty much oblivious to all of this. To the teenagers, the favorites and likes that they get on their pictures and videos and other content that they post on social media is a form of validation and social currency. In other words, it's more or less an extension of the popularity contest of high school. After the documentary has looked at the ordinary, everyday teenager and how they use social media, it goes on to examine the outliers, people who have used social media to become celebrities of a sort. Generation Like profiles the YouTube star Tyler Oakley, who describes himself as a professional fangirl, and discusses how his popularity on YouTube is largely built on talking about things which are already popular, essentially siphoning off some of the popularity for himself. Now, of course, some of his popularity can be accounted for by his personality, his delivery style, and so on. Nonetheless, it is fundamentally built on the popularity of other things. Pre-established popularity goes a long way towards winning an audience. Having been on YouTube for over 9 years now, I'm not all that surprised by the sorts of insights that Generation Like gives into how things like YouTube popularity work. Nonetheless, if you've never really thought about it, I would recommend this documentary, as well as another documentary that I want to talk about soon called Please Subscribe, which is all about YouTube, whereas this covers a broad number of different related topics. As a kind of counterpoint to the discussion of the popularity of Tyler Oakley, Generation Like also talks about another up-and-coming YouTuber named Liam, who's a musician. And when discussing him and how he's networking with all these other YouTube stars in order to gain more popularity, I think that's when the documentary delivers one of the most telling lines about YouTube popularity. Rushkoff says, "Liam has genuine talent, but it's almost beside the point. To get ahead, he needs to attach himself to others who have mastered the game of likes." And that pretty much sums it up. Network, network, network. As the old saying goes, it's all about who you know, and talent and hard work don't necessarily count for as much as you would think. Although Generation Like doesn't really explore the role of things like personality in YouTube popularity, it does a good job of examining things like networking, self-promotion, and being topical as being major components of YouTube popularity. Another part of the documentary that I found interesting was talking about a kid named Steven, who apparently goes by the username Baby Scumbag, who started out making skateboard videos, but soon discovered that he could get way more views and thus way more ad revenue by making more shocking jackass-style videos. What that section of the documentary talks about is basically the economics of clickbait. When views and likes equate to money, then people will sink lower and lower in order to attract those views. Which is why I titled this video Emma Watson Nude Photos Leaked. Generation Like shatters the notion that social media is all about the spontaneous and organic sharing of content. The reality is that companies are doing quite a lot of work behind the scenes in order to push their products. Many of the memes and GIFs that you see on sites like Facebook and Tumblr are in fact created by marketing companies in order to push shows and movies and products. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the documentary for old fogies such as myself is the fact that the youth of today don't seem to have a concept of being a sellout. I got a comment a while back on a video in which I mentioned Generation Like that I think is pretty much on point. The user Eddie Dees says, "Just watch Generation Like. Somebody tell me it's bad that these kids don't know what a sellout is and are willing shills, because if it's not, then it means I'm old." But that gets to one of the undercurrents that runs throughout the documentary. Kids today might not have a concept of being a sellout because of celebrity culture. Young people seem to think that being a celebrity is an end unto itself. Not, what am I going to be famous for? What do I have to contribute to society? But how many people can like me? How popular and well-known can I get? The whole be a celebrity for celebrity's sake thing that we've seen with things like reality television and so on. I mean, think about it. When you already have a desire for fame and recognition, then what is selling out other than a means to get more recognition? The endorsements and corporate sponsorships, these are all just proof and certifications of your fame and importance. These are badges of honor to the younger demographic who desperately wants to be famous because that's good for some reason or whatever. As a side note, although it's mostly unrelated to this, I'm going to post a link in the description to a talk given by Jack Gleeson, you know, the guy who played Joffrey on Game of Thrones. Of course, everyone hates that character, but the actor himself actually seems like a really cool person. And he gave a whole speech about fame and the desire for fame. It's really interesting and well thought out and academic even, and so I'll put a link to that in the description, as well as, of course, links to Generation Like and The Merchants of Cool, both of which you can watch online for free. But to return to talking about the documentary Generation Like, one might ask, well, what's wrong with pursuing fame for fame's sake and being a sellout shill on the internet? And towards that, Generation Like makes an analogy, a Hunger Games analogy, where the people constructing social media and the marketers are like the game makers in the Hunger Games, and the people out there being the shills and trying to get likes and trying to be popular are like the contestants in the Hunger Games, trying to get corporate sponsorships, trying to get the audience to like them. And that analogy is one of my favorite parts of the documentary. I think that this is an important documentary to watch because it examines a side of social media and the internet that people often don't think about. In short, I would highly recommend this documentary, Generation Like, as well as its previous documentary, The Merchants of Cool, both of which can be watched online for free on PBS. If you've already seen it, tell me what you think in the comments section. If you go and watch either of these documentaries after hearing me talk about it, then by all means come back and then leave a comment telling what you thought about all of it. And don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, because I'm a shill. And this video was brought to you by Canon Cameras, Rode Video Mics. I joke. I wish Canon gave me free stuff. Yeah, Canon, any representatives of Canon, if you want to support my channel, feel free to send me a free C300. It's about a $30,000 camera, and I would totally show your products for a free 30 grand camera. If you could also throw in some of the Cine lenses, because those are like $10,000 a piece as well, I will totally pimp out all your products. But for my audience, for those of you who aren't Canon sales representatives, have a nice whatever time it is, and goodbye.